Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of The Sauce. NFL Week 9, going through Sunday's games. I'm going to go through about 5 or 6 of them. Whatever I don't get to, we will go through Sunday morning on the live show at 11 a.m. right here on YouTube. I'll also post my final bets with top bets, parlays of the day, that kind of stuff. That'll be on Kirms.com, probably around 11 p.m., midnight, Saturday night late. So if you don't want to wait for the live show, you can head there. Let's get started.
Welcome to The Sauce. The Sauce. Hey, get the sauce.
Before I get to the first game, we're actually going to start with an underdog pick'em from Prop Beaver, who's been hot. He's having himself a hell of a nice little 10-day run right now. He sent in a 3 pick, so it pays out 6 times. Number 1, Jahan Dotson, higher than 7.95 fantasy points. Number 2, Jonathan Taylor, higher than 11.35 fantasy points. Number 3, Bryce Young, higher than 65.2 completion percentage. Like I said, that's a 3 pick, so it pays out 6 times. If you don't have an Underdog fantasy account, it's available in any state highlighted in this map. So if you're in one of these states and you don't have an account, go over to Underdog Fantasy, the website, or you can download the app. When you make your account, make sure you use the promo code BET. That'll give you a $500 deposit bonus, $500. So if you deposit $500, they will give you a free $500 to play with. First up, we're starting overseas in Germany. We got Dolphins, Chiefs. Chiefs are currently laying 2. This number's been bouncing around a little bit. Total sitting at 50.5. So early in the week, this line was sitting at 2.5. Everyone's pretty much been betting Kansas City this whole time. Line still dropped down to 1.5, but now it's back at 2. You could still get 1.5s out there, though, at the time of recording this. Let's start with some injury reports, and there's really no need to even bring up the Chiefs offense because it's completely healthy and ready to roll. No injuries on the Chiefs offense. Chiefs defense is in pretty good shape also. They're going to be without Nick Bolton at linebacker. He missed last week's game against Denver as well. Willie Gay is questionable as well, but he practiced on Thursday and Friday, so I'm assuming he's going to play. Now we get to the Dolphins offense, and this is kind of just a mess here. I think Terron Armstead may be returning to left tackle. That hasn't been confirmed. We don't know yet. He's been out since week 4. Both guards are confirmed out, so they're going to be without both guards. Center Connor Williams also listed as questionable. I mean, he did participate in live practice, so it looks like he might play. Offensive line for Miami, good luck trying to figure out the injury situation there. As far as skill positions, obviously Devin Achane still out. Smythe and Barrios both listed as questionable as well, but they both been practicing, so I think they're both going to be out there. On the defensive side of the ball, Miami's actually in pretty good shape. Jalen Ramsey's back, as we know. I think Xavier Howard should be on the field here. He participated in a couple light practices, so it's really the Miami offensive line that's the big question mark here. So let's match these two teams up on the field. We all know what it is with the Miami offense. We know Tua in that passing game has been electric. They're 3rd in passing DVOA, 1st in yards per attempt, 1st in passer rating. But there are a couple concerning splits here for the Dolphins offense. First one being Tua hasn't been nearly as potent on the road. At home, he's got 12 touchdowns, 3 picks, 121 passer ratings, been sacked 3 times. On the road, just 6 touchdowns and 4 picks, a 97 passer rating, and he's been sacked 8 times. Another concerning split for this offense and for Tua, and everyone's kind of talking about this right now, Tua's played just 2 teams with a winning record this season. Against teams with a losing record, he's averaging 320 yards per game, 9.3 yards per attempt, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks, a 114 passer rating. Against teams with a winning record, he's only played 2 of them, just 249 yards per game, 7.4 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 90 passer rating. I do have some good news for the Dolphins offense, though. Kansas City defensively, they run a good amount of man coverage. 55.8% of their defensive snaps have been in man coverage. That's the 8th most in the NFL. Tua has been a monster against man coverage. I mean, you can't run man against that offense. On the season, he's 1st in passer rating, 1st in net yards per attempt, 1st in touchdown rate against man coverage. And on top of that, the Chiefs pass rush really hasn't been there this year like it has been in years past. I mean, we're used to the pass rush being the backbone of that defense. This year, they're just 24th in pressure rate. They are 2nd in adjusted sack rate, so when they're getting to the quarterback, they're getting him down. But just 24th in pressure rate, 14th in PFF pass rush grade. But the thing is, it really hasn't showed because the Chiefs defense as a whole has been excellent against the pass. They're 4th in pass defense DVOA, 9th in opponent passer rating, 2nd in yards per attempt. So the Chiefs defense has almost been flipped from what we've seen in years past. It's usually the pass rush carries the defense. This year, the pass rush hasn't been that great, but the defense against the pass has really stepped up. The reason I bring that up is they need to get pressure on Tua in this game. We know what Tua's like. I mean, I feel like I've read these splits 100 times, but in case you're new to the channel, when Tua is given a clean pocket, he is first in passer rating. He's thrown for 16 touchdowns, which is first, second in yards per attempt, third in completion percentage. When he's pressured, though, 28th in passer rating, tied for 18th with just 2 passing touchdowns, 21st in yards per attempt, and 32nd in completion percentage. Now, Miami's been great in pass protection this year. Now, you can question the pass rushes that they've seen, but they're second in adjusted sack rate allowed, second in pressure rate allowed, first in QB hit rate allowed. So that's a huge question we need answered. Do we think the Chiefs pass rush is going to show up and start to look like the 2022 Chiefs or Chiefs of years past? Because if that's the case, then Kansas City is the play here. But if you're going by this year's numbers, Miami should score some points in this one. As far as the Dolphins' run game, kind of tough to get a read on because on paper, they're the best rushing attack in the NFL so far. They're first in rushing DVOA, first in yards per carry, first in adjusted line yards. But the last 2 weeks, when they finally saw some decent run defenses, the run game just fell off. I mean, it also could be because they're missing Devin Achane as well. But the last 2 weeks against Philly and New England, just 3.2 yards per carry compared to 5.9 yards per carry through the first 6 weeks. Now, the Chiefs do not have a good run defense. They're just 23rd in rushing DVOA, 24th in yards per carry, and 29th in adjusted line yards. So according to the numbers, Miami should be running the ball all over the Chiefs without a problem. Not too sure about that, though, because Achane is still out. So we don't know if the Dolphins' dip in rushing production is because they played good defenses finally, or because Achane's been out. I guess we'll find out in this game. Now, on the other side of the ball, here is where you can find some angles for Kansas City. Dolphins defense has definitely been vulnerable to the pass. 17th in pass defense DVOA, 26th in passer rating allowed, 19th in yards per pass attempt allowed. And whenever Miami's seen a good offense with a good quarterback, a threatening passing attack, they've gotten cooked. Against top 10 offenses this year, they've seen 3, Chargers, Bills, and Eagles. 41 points per game allowed, over 400 yards per game, 76% red zone touchdown percentage is crazy, and 18 of 37 third down conversions on the Dolphins defense when they see a top 10 offense. Against the other offenses they've seen, they look pretty solid. The Patriots, the Broncos, the Giants, the Panthers, that defense looked pretty good against those teams, but whenever they've seen a good quarterback and a good passing offense, they've struggled. There's not a ton of angles here for the Dolphins defense. There's really only one big one in my opinion. They run a ton of man coverage, and that's been the way to stop Patrick Mahomes this year. You can't sit in zone coverage against these guys. Mahomes and Kelsey will literally pick you apart all day if you sit in zone, but Patrick Mahomes has been struggling against man coverage this year. Against zone, he's first in passer rating, second in net yards per attempt, second in touchdown rate. Against man coverage, 19th, 16th, and 12th. And keep in mind, the Dolphins can pressure the quarterback. That's probably their best defensive asset is their pass rush. They're 5th in adjusted sack rate, 8th in pressure rate, 5th in QB hit rate. So we know what Vic Fangio is going to do with his defense in this one. They're going to be coming after Mahomes and relying on his DBs to outplay the Chiefs' receiving weapons. There's going to be a ton of pressure on guys like Rashee Rice, Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore. These guys are going to see one-on-one man coverage all day. They have to win their matchups. And it's extremely important because I don't know if the run game's going to be there for the Chiefs in this game. Dolphins run defensive numbers on the season aren't great. 28th in DVOA, 12th in yards per carry, 18th in adjusted line yards. But I think they may be a bit undervalued, and I said the same thing last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. The Dolphins got run all over by the Chargers in week 1. They allowed 5.8 yards per carry. In the 7 games since then, they're allowing just 3.77 yards per carry, and the Dolphins were a top 5 run defense last year. So I think this Dolphins defense is much better against the run than the numbers indicate. And the Chiefs rushing offense has just fallen off a cliff. On the season, they're 21st in DVOA, 15th in yards per carry, 23rd in adjusted line yards. Those are decent, average, slightly below average. But through the first 4 weeks, they were averaging 4.7 yards per carry, 137 rush yards per game. In their last 4 weeks, those numbers dropped to just 73 rushing yards per game, just 3.4 yards per carry. And that was against Minnesota, Denver twice, and the Chargers. It's not like they played rock-solid run defenses. Last up, got some betting trends here. The first one everyone's talking about. I saw it went viral on Twitter. The Dolphins have not beat a team with a winning record since week 3 of last season when they beat the Bills. So it's been well over a year since the Dolphins won a game against a team with a winning record. Miami is 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 as underdogs. The over is 6-1 in the Dolphins' last 7 as underdogs. Kansas City 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games overall. Under is 6-2 in Kansas City's last 8 games, and the under has hit 4 straight times in Chiefs games. As far as what I'm betting, I'm with the public on this one. I'm on the Chiefs. I think this number should be at 3 even. Miami keeps fooling us. I'm really drinking the Kool-Aid on that stat. Miami just doesn't beat good teams. I'm rolling with that. I feel like the Chiefs find a way to win here. I think one of the Chiefs wide receivers will have a big game. Whether it's Rice, Valdez-Scantling, I think one of them is going to have a big game. So give me Kansas City -1.5. You could still get 1.5 right now. Next game. Rams are on the road in Lambeau to play the Pack. Green Bay laying 3 points at home here. Total sitting at 38.5. So this line's been sitting at 3 this whole week. Public is definitely coming in on Green Bay. Haven't seen it touch 3.5 yet, at least what I've seen. We'll have to keep an eye on this one moving forward. I don't know. It might hit 3.5, but it seems like the action's definitely coming in on the Packers. So let's run through some injury reports. Green Bay offensively, actually pretty healthy, which is a nice refreshing change of pace for them. Myers is back at center. He's good to go. Jenkins most likely back at guard. He's good to go. Luke Musgrave's back. He had a concussion. I think he missed 1 game. He's back at tight end. Bakhtiari is the only missing piece. Obviously, he's out for the season. And the same goes for the Packers defensively as well. Jair Alexander, he should be back. Preston Smith, Devondre Campbell, both removed from the injury report. Rudy Ford is questionable, but he's been practicing, so looks like he has a good shot of playing. Quay Walker is the only true question mark. He wasn't even on the injury report to start the week, but apparently Matt LaFleur said he may not play. Just saw it on Twitter earlier today, actually. On the Rams side, they're definitely dealing with a few, big one being Matt Stafford. Looks like he's not going to play. He hasn't practiced all week. I doubt we'll see him out there. Obviously, Kyren Williams still out at running back. Their right tackle also hasn't practiced all week. He's listed as questionable, but not one practice. I'd say that's leaning towards not playing. And Puka Nacua also listed as questionable, but he hasn't missed a practice this week, so I'd say he's most likely playing. On the defensive side of the ball, the Rams are still without Bobby Brown. He hasn't played since week 5. Ernest Jones is out at linebacker, and that's a new one. He hasn't missed a game yet this season. He is officially ruled out. And their corner, Kobe Durant, he's listed as questionable, but he's been practicing all week, so I'm assuming he's going to probably play. I'm going to skip this one and save it for the live show. I'd like it to be confirmed that Stafford isn't playing before I place a bet. I mean, I think all signs point to he's probably not playing, but I'd like to see it confirmed. So I'll go over this one on the live show Sunday morning, 11 a.m., or you can go on KyleKirms.com. I'll post it late Saturday night. Next game. Washington Commanders on the road in New England to play the Pats. Patriots laying 2.5 here. This line's been bouncing around a little bit too. It was at 3 for a while. It was actually at 3.5. I'll get to that in a second. Total now sitting at 40.5. Public's pretty split even on this one, and like I said, this line was at 3.5. It actually started at 3, then it moved up to 3.5 for most of Wednesday into Thursday morning. Then it dropped back down to 3. Now I'm seeing mostly 2.5s across the board. Still a few 3s out there, though. We'll start with some injury reports. Commanders' offense is going to be without their left guard again. He didn't play in the Eagles game either. Curtis Samuel listed as questionable. He didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday, so I say there's probably a pretty good chance he doesn't play. On the defensive side of the ball, they're still missing that safety, Forrest. He hasn't played since week 5. Cody Barton also still out. This will be the second game in a row he's missed. Percy Butler's listed as questionable, but he hasn't missed the practice, so I assume he'll be out there. Now let's talk New England's injuries, and I mean, brace yourself. Riley Reiff, obviously still out at right tackle. He hasn't played since week 1. Kendrick Bourne is out for this game. He hasn't missed a game all season. He's out. Trent Brown listed as questionable, but he hasn't practiced at all this week. Probably looking like he's not going to play. Devontae Parker also listed as questionable. He hasn't practiced this week either. Looking like he probably won't play. And believe it or not, when we switch it over to the Patriots defense, it actually gets worse. The Patriots defense right now is just a crime scene as far as injuries go. Christian Gonzalez out. Marcus Jones out. Matthew Judon out. Jonathan Jones, Miles Bryant, both listed as questionable. So the Patriots might be missing 4 corners in this game. 4. Now, Jonathan Jones participated in light practice. It looks like he's probably going to play, but still, at cornerback, the Patriots are an absolute mess, and Washington's got some receiving talent. Of the starting defensive front 7 for New England, 1 is out and 4 are questionable. Godshaw hasn't practiced all week with an illness. He might not play. The other 3, though, Uche, Wise, and Bentley, they've all been participating in light practice, so I assume those 3 are going to play. But still, this defense is an absolute mess injury-wise. So obviously, everyone's talking about how Washington lost Montez Sweat and Chase Young at the trade deadline. No doubt, 2 huge pieces of that defense. But we need to start out by pointing out that Washington's pass rush numbers, they're not as impressive as people think. I feel like people think the Commanders have this insane pass rush. They're just 13th in adjusted sack sack rate, 13th in pressure rate, 11th in PFF pass rush grade. Now, obviously, these numbers are going to drop without Sweat and Young out there, but I think people picture Washington as this elite pass rush, and now their defense is just dismantled without these two edge rushers, and in my opinion, that's exaggerated a bit. The Patriots' pass protection is not very good. These numbers are deceiving. They're kind of like the Bucs' pass protection from last year. Sure, they're 6th in adjusted sack rate and 8th in pressure rate allowed. That's because they get the ball out of Mac Jones' hands in 2 seconds as quickly as possible, just like the Bucs did with Tom Brady last year. New England's rated just 27th in PFF pass block grade, and keep in mind, Patriots might be without both offensive tackles. They're definitely missing one, probably missing the other. Basically, the point I'm making is I'm sure we're going to notice the drop-off in Washington's pass rush. I just don't know if this is going to be the matchup where we see it. And I really don't expect the Washington run defense to change much. Chase Young is really not much of a factor at all against the run. Montez Sweat is a solid piece in the run game, but I expect the Commanders' run defense to look somewhat similar to what we've seen this year, and they've been pretty good. 21st in yards per carry allowed, but they're 6th in run defense DVOA, 13th in PFF run defense grade. New England hasn't had a run game this whole year. 27th in yards per carry, 19th in rushing DVOA, 20th in adjusted line yards. I mean, I guess we're seeing a little bit of an improvement recently, but not really. Look at the Commanders' last 2 road games. They held Atlanta to 16 points on 3.7 yards per carry. They held the Giants to 14 points on 3.3 yards per carry. I mean, Montez Sweat was a beast in that Giants game, but the Falcons game, Montez Sweat and Chase Young combined to have just 1 tackle. My overall thought process here is the Commanders' defense without those 2 guys is going to be bad, no doubt. But the idea that this Patriots offense with all their injuries is going to be the unit to completely expose them, I just can't get on board with that. On the other side of the ball, Washington needs to keep Sam Howell clean. I mean, look at their schedule. They're 3-5. Against teams with bad pass rushes, they're 3-1. Against teams with good pass rushes, they're 0-4. It's really that simple. The only game that doesn't fit that mold is the Bears. Chicago has a bad pass rush, and Washington still lost that game. That was a weird one on Thursday Night Football. Justin Fields threw for like 4 touchdowns in the first half or some shit like that. On the season, Washington's pass protection numbers aren't as bad as you'd think. They're 16th in adjusted sack rate allowed, 22nd in pressure rate allowed. PFF's got them at 8th in pass blocking grade. Meaning they think the pass protection problems may be a lot of it may be on Sam Howell is what they're implying with that. The thing is, I don't know if I trust this Patriots defense anymore. Look at their PFF grades by week here. On this chart is their overall defensive grade, their pass rush grade, and their coverage grade. Through 3 weeks, they were looking solid. Then in week 4, that was the Cowboys game. They lost Matthew Judon, they lost Christian Gonzalez, and they just haven't looked like a good defense since. PFF grades in the first 3 weeks were up in the 60s, 70s. Now they're down in the 50s and even the 40s. We saw the Raiders throwing the ball in New England back in week 6. This was a combination of Jimmy Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer. Jimmy G got injured and didn't play in the second half. Raiders were able to throw the ball a bit in that game, 8.3 yards per attempt, 63% completions. It wasn't an explosion, but it was enough to beat them. Look, say what you want about Sam Howell. Maybe he holds on to the ball too long. He's still developing, but he had that terrible game against the Bills at the end of September. Look at the numbers from his 5 games since then in October compared to his numbers in the first 3 games. Since October started, Sam Howell's averaging almost 300 pass yards per game, a passer rating at 98, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I mean, since that game in Buffalo, this kid's been pretty good throwing the ball, and I don't trust this Patriots pass defense right now. I could see Sam Howell making some plays on that New England secondary. Now, where Washington's going to run into some problems is trying to establish the run, though, because New England's run defense hasn't fallen off like the pass defense has. They're still 2nd in the NFL, allowing just 3.4 yards per carry, 7th in run defense DVOA, 13th in adjusted line yards. They haven't allowed more than 4 yards per carry in a game since Dallas in week 4. Now, Washington's run game is definitely on the come up. They're mixing Chris Rodriguez in there now. So they're rolling with this 3-headed running back attack with Robinson and Gibson, and it's working. Washington's got themselves into the top half of the NFL in rushing metrics, but on the road in New England, I just don't think it's realistic to think the Commanders are going to run the ball efficiently in this game. But still, at a full 3, I mean, I already got in. I grabbed Washington at +3. I wanted 3.5, but I missed it. If you like Washington, if you want to tail me on this, I would get it in now because I'm seeing more and more 2.5s pop up. At 2.5, I would still lean Washington, but it would probably be a pass for me. So Give me Washington +3. I already got it. Next game. Tampa Bay Bucks on the road in Houston. This line is Houston -3, which is up from 2.5, but I actually still see 2.5s out there. So this is another line that's bouncing around. Total sitting at 40. This line was at 2.5 early in the week. Publics come in split 50-50, but the sharp action is definitely on the Texans. The odds makers reacted to it. They put it up to 3. But like I said, now I'm starting to see 2.5, so maybe it's coming back down. We'll have to keep an eye on this one. So let's roll through some injury reports. We'll start with Houston's offense. Offensive line is actually looking good. They've been getting healthier every single week for the last month now. If you remember, they were dealing with some serious shit earlier in the season. They have the full starting 5 healthy and good to go, or they should have the full starting 5 healthy and good to go this week. That may be the first time that's been the case all season. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure every piece on this offensive line has missed games this year. As far as skill positions, Houston's going to be without running back Dameon Pierce and Robert Woods at wide receiver. So they are missing a couple pieces on this offense, but overall, offense is in decent shape injury-wise compared to what they've been dealing with all year. On the defensive side of the ball, Houston's obviously still missing Stingley Jr. He hasn't played since week 2. Other than that, it's only Rankins at defensive tackle. He's missed a couple weeks now, but he's been participating in practice, so I actually think he returns to the lineup for Houston this week. Tampa Bay offensively is missing 3 pieces, but 2 of them have been out for the entire season. Center Ryan Jensen, I don't think he's played this whole year. Russell Gage also, he was out for the season, I think in training camp or week 1. No, I think it was training camp. So neither of those guys have been in the lineup. And now Matt Feller also ruled out. He missed last week's game against the Bills as well. On the defensive side, the Bucs are looking good to go. Vea participating in full practices. He's going to play. Looks like Logan Hall is going to be the only missing piece on this defense. So let's match these two teams up on the field. First question, is the Baker Mayfield magic running out? Through the first 4 games, 99.7 passer rating, 69% completions. In the last 3, down to 58% completion, 76 passer rating. Now, the Texans' pass defense has not been good. 21st in yards per pass attempt allowed, 24th in DVOA, 24th in adjusted sack rate. So that's a positive for Baker. And another positive for Baker would be that Houston runs a decent amount of zone coverage. 63.8 of the Houston defensive snaps this year have been in zone coverage. That's the 10th most in the NFL. Baker Mayfield and the Bucs passing offense against zone this year, 6th in passer rating, 7th in net yards per attempt. Want to know another quarterback that's been struggling this year and has better splits against zone coverage and just showed up against Houston recently? Bryce Young. He just had his best career game against the Texans, 7.6 yards per pass attempt, a 103.6 passer rating. So maybe there's hope for Baker Mayfield here. Bryce Young, obviously, he's had his struggles this year. He was able to piece apart this zone. Baker Mayfield also has better splits against the zone. Maybe he snaps his cold streak. Now, the good news for Houston is Tampa Bay might have the worst rushing attack in the entire NFL. It's not making a joke, not being sarcastic. I think it's the worst. Just 17 carries, 76 yards on the Bills last week. Everybody's running the ball on the Bills right now. That defense is a mess, especially against the run. Tampa Bay rushing on the season, 31st in yards per carry, 31st in DVOA, 32nd in adjusted line yards. Yeah, it's bad. And the Houston Texans have played great defense against the run. This might really be a top 5 run defense here in Houston. They're 3rd in yards per carry allowed, 16th in rushing DVOA, 6th in adjusted line yards. And that Texans run defense only seems to be getting better and better as the season progresses. Falcons just 2.7 yards per carry. Saints just 3.6 yards per carry. Panthers 1.8 yards per carry. I don't see any angle that shows Tampa being able to run the ball in this game. Situationally, Houston's defense in the red zone with the huge edge over Tampa here. 8th in red zone defense compared to 28th for the Bucs red zone offense. So maybe a look at the Bucs kickers over for those you weirdos who bet kicker props. People like those. So yeah, that might be an angle for that. Now on the other side of the ball, I don't know what to say about this Bucs pass defense anymore. On the season, the numbers don't look that bad. 23rd in yards per pass attempt allowed, 15th in DVOA, 20th in adjusted sack rate. But the last 3 weeks have just been a nightmare. Tampa is dead last in mostly all pass defensive categories in the last 3 weeks. Their zone was getting pieced up by Desmond Ridder. I had Bucs plus 9.5 last Thursday, and I was watching that game, and I said in the Discord, guys, we can never trust this Tampa Bay pass defense again. It looked so bad, and it has looked bad for multiple weeks now. But here's the most difficult part about betting this game, at least for me. Yeah, the Bucs pass defense has completely fallen off the map. Cannot trust the Bucs against the pass anymore. But you know what? So is CJ Stroud a little bit. On the season, Houston's 5th in yards per pass attempt, 5th in DVOA, 14th in adjusted sack rate. But look at the drop-off in passing production in the last 2 games. 292 yards per game down to 169. Yards per attempt is down. Touchdown to interception ratio is down. Passer rating is down. I'm not really sure what to make of that either. So trying to decipher the matchup between CJ Stroud throwing the ball on this Bucs pass defense, I mean, flip a coin. Both looked good early in the season and both look like trash recently. And it's not like we can count on Houston to run the ball here. The run game hasn't been there all season, and now they're going to be without Dameon Pierce. The Bucs rush defense on the season, 13th in DVOA, 11th in yards per carry allowed, 22nd in adjusted line yards. And props to Tampa Bay. They faced a lot of strong rushing attacks on the season, 4 in the top 10. Chicago, Philadelphia, Saints are 13th, Falcons are 15th, Lions are 8th, but Bills are 10th. I mean, Tampa Bay has seen a lot of strong rushing attacks, and they've held their own against the run. And I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but on this side of the ball, we have another kicker over angle. Bucs defense, number 1 in the red zone, literally 1st in red zone defense. Houston red zone offense, 26th. So another kicker over angle. One last thing I wanted to mention here, I should have mentioned this earlier. An interesting matchup here is the Bucs blitz a lot. They're 5th in blitz rate in the NFL, and CJ Stroud has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when blitzed. 8th in completion percentage and 1st in yards per attempt against the blitz. So interesting to see, because he's been struggling, if he's still able to pick apart defenses when they blitz. We'll have to see. Got some betting trends here for those of you who are into that. Tampa Bay 3-6 against the spread as an underdog in the last 2 years. 8-15-1 straight up in the regular season in that same span. 3-2 as against the spread as an away underdog. Houston Texans 8-7-1 against the spread after a loss in the last 2 years. 0-1 as a home favorite against the spread in that span. As far as what I'm betting, I mean, I kind of regret spending so much time talking about this game because I don't even really like it. If you can get 2.5, I'd take Houston. I probably will end up playing Houston at 2.5. Really comes down to CJ Stroud. If he plays like he was playing earlier in the season, then I think the Texans win this game by double digits. But if he struggles again, like we've seen him struggle the last 2 weeks, final score of this game could be 14-13. So I'll take Houston. Probably going to end up putting it as one of my smaller bets on the final ticket. We'll see. I'll let you know on the live show Sunday morning, or I will also post it on the website late Saturday night on KyleKirms.com. Next game, Arizona Cards on the road in Cleveland to play the Browns. This line is now Cleveland minus a full 10, which is up from 8. Total sitting at 40. Public is all over Cleveland in this one, and the line is now up to 10. I mean, if you didn't get in on the Browns at under 10, which I didn't, I wish I was holding a Browns minus 8.5 ticket, but I'm not. We may have missed the value on this one. I'm skipping this one for now. I mean, we'll talk about it on the live show Sunday morning, but you got Clayton Tune making his first NFL start. Deshaun Watson returning from injury. There's just a lot of moving pieces here. We're talking about a double-digit point spread. I mean, obviously, I would love to have Cleveland at under 10. So if you can grab Cleveland under 10, go ahead and take it. If not, we'll see on Sunday morning. Next game, Chicago Bears on the road in NOLA. Saints laying 8.5 points here, which is up from 7.5. Total sitting at 41. We're looking at a pros versus public setup in this one. Public is all over New Orleans. Sharp action all over the Bears. Odds makers have moved the line towards the public. Like I said, we're now up to New Orleans minus 8.5. I'm going to skip this one too for now. I just don't have a ton of interest in it. I bet the Bears last week on Sunday Night Football against the Chargers, took a hard loss there. I actually bet it pretty heavy too, so it wouldn't really hit me in the face. 8.5 with the Saints. So I'll skip this one. We'll talk about it on the live show. And if I find anything I like, I'll put it on the website Saturday night. Next game, Seattle on the road in Baltimore, and what might be the best game of the week. Either that or Cowboys Eagles. 2 really good ones though. We got Baltimore laying 6 points at home here, total sitting at 44. We got another pros versus public setup here. Public is definitely leaning towards Baltimore. Sharps are definitely on Seattle. Line still sitting at 6. I did see a couple 5.5s out there, but for the most part, we're looking at 6s across the board. Injury-wise, both of these teams are coming into this game very healthy. Ravens offensively are likely missing their right tackle Morgan Moses. Other than that, they are at full strength though. On the defensive side, you got Marcus Williams and Rock Ya-Sin, both questionable, but both have practiced all week, so I'm assuming both are going to be on the field. Ravens defense is good to go as well. And we're looking at the same sort of situation for Seattle. Offensively, they got guard Phil Haynes. He's listed as questionable, but he participated in a full practice on Friday, so it's looking like he's going to play. Everyone else on the Seahawks offense is ready to go. On the defensive side of the ball, Seattle is missing Nuasu. He's been out a couple weeks now. Maffei's listed as questionable. He's most likely playing. He participated in a full practice. So, and this, by the way, this is a Seahawks defense that recently added Leonard Williams. So this defense was already good, and now Leonard Williams added to the defensive line. Seattle's defense is going to be a problem. So let's start by taking a look at Geno Smith's ugly game against the Browns last week. Just 23 of 37, 254 yards, 6.9 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and just a 78 passer rating. I mean, that was a terrible matchup for Geno. He struggles against pressure, and Cleveland, as we know, probably has the best pass rush in the NFL. Geno Smith on the season, when given a clean pocket, 5th in yards per attempt and 4th in big-time throw percentage. When pressured, 25th and 33rd. Geno Smith's another guy you have to give a clean pocket to. And that's a positive angle for the Seahawks offense here, because the Ravens, they do record a lot of sacks, but they're just 20th in pressure rate, 27th in hurry rate. They don't generate consistent pressure. That's the good news for Geno. The bad news for Geno, just like the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore runs a man-heavy offense. Browns are 9th in man coverage frequency. Ravens are 5th. So Baltimore runs even more man coverage than Cleveland does, and Geno has not been nearly as good against man as he has against zone. Against zone coverage on the year, Geno is 8th in passer rating, 8th in net yards per attempt. Against man coverage, 25th and 20th. So definitely a drop-off in production there. And to make matters worse, Baltimore is sitting on top of basically every metric when it comes to pass defense. 1st in DVOA, 1st in opponent passer rating, 1st in yards per pass attempt allowed. This Baltimore pass defense has been a serious unit. If you're looking to poke holes in the Ravens pass defense, you could look at the level of competition. I mean, they played CJ Stroud in his NFL debut. It was week 1. They played Cincinnati in week 2. They got Joe Burrow in the middle of his calf problems. They got Gardner Minshew, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada were in there. Ryan Tannehill on the road, and he got hurt. Malik Willis was in there. You got Jared Goff on the road in a bad spot for the Lions. That's a good offense, though. And then you got Josh Dobbs after his production has completely fallen off. So I'm not trying to discredit the Ravens pass defense. I'm saying if you look at the schedule, they really haven't seen a dangerous passing attack other than Jared Goff, and that was a terrible spot for the Lions. So this matchup against the Seattle passing attack, you can make an argument that this may be the toughest matchup for the Ravens pass defense to date this year. As far as the Seahawks trying to run the ball, I mean, they've been pretty good this year. It's been up and down. But they're 16th in rushing DVOA, 11th in yards per carry, 7th in unadjusted line yards. So the run game's been there. They're coming off an excellent game running the football against Cleveland, which is one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Last week against Cleveland, 17 carries, 114 yards, 6.7 yards per carry. And that's where the weakness is on this Baltimore defense. As good as they've been against the pass, you can run the ball on the Ravens, and we've seen it in the last 3 weeks. Through the first 5 weeks, they were allowing just 3.57 yards per carry, but who did they play? Houston, Cincinnati, the Colts are a good rushing attack, but Cleveland, Pittsburgh, bunch of offenses that can't really run the ball. In the last 3 weeks, they saw Tennessee, Detroit, and Arizona, 3 teams that can run the ball, and they're allowing 5.25 yards per carry. On the other side of the ball, we'll start with Seattle's pass defense, which has been solid this year, not amazing. 19th in DVOA, 8th in yards per attempt, 11th in opponent passer rating. They started the season off with 2 bad performances defending the pass. Jared Goff and Matt Stafford, both of those guys were able to throw the ball in Seattle early in weeks 1 and 2. 328 yards per game, a 106 passer rating, over 71% completions. Since then, they've been much better. They've been very good against the pass, but you got to ask against who. You got Carolina. Andy Dalton played that game. The Giants, the Bengals, when they played Joe Burrow in the middle of the calf stuff. Arizona, Cleveland. I mean, they got excellent numbers against the pass. 5.9 yards per attempt, 62% completions, 74 passer rating, but they really haven't seen a quarterback in a while. So what I said about the Ravens pass defense earlier, you can kind of copy and paste that and say the same thing about the Seattle Seahawks pass defense. The biggest matchup on this side of the ball is going to be Seattle's pass rush against the Ravens pass protection. Seattle in the season just 14th in adjusted sack rate, 8th in pressure rate, 9th in QB hit rate. But remember, they started off the season so slow. That pass rush is starting to get hot, and now they just added Leonard Williams to it. Pass protection is by far the weakest part of this Ravens team. On the season, they're just 21st in adjusted sack rate, 18th in pressure rate, 26th in QB hurry rate. So Ravens offensive line has struggled to keep Lamar Jackson safe back there. But here's the thing, Lamar Jackson has been the best quarterback in the NFL when pressured this year. He is absolutely cooked on defenses when he's pressured. On the season, when Lamar Jackson is pressured, he's first in passer rating, first in big time throw percentage, second in PFF passer grade, first in yards per attempt, first in passing touchdowns. He's been excellent under pressure this year. So a lot of angles pointing towards Baltimore so far, and only a few pointing towards the Seahawks. But here's the big one. If you like the Seahawks and the points, this is your big angle right here. The Seattle run defense is excellent. They're 8th in DVOA, 3rd in yards per carry allowed, 4th in adjusted line yards. And those numbers aren't even as good as they should be because they had that one bad game against Arizona. Against the Cardinals, they allowed 127 yards on 5.1 yards per carry. The rest of their season, just 3.8 yards per carry. This run defense is serious. And again, this is the 3rd time I mentioned it, but they just added Leonard Williams, who is excellent against the run. As good as Lamar Jackson has been this year, this is still a Ravens offense that wants to run the ball. They're 2nd in rushing DVOA, 10th in adjusted line yards, 8th in yards per carry. But something to note, the Ravens have only played 2 defenses in the top 10 as far as run defenses go, the Titans and the Browns. And in those 2 games, they were held to under 3.8 yards per carry. One last angle, and it's a huge one for the Ravens defense. Situational stats for those of you who like those. Huge edge for the Ravens offense. Seattle defensively, 3rd downs in red zone, 28th and 30th. Ravens offense 6th and 3rd. Got some trends here. Got a lot of trends prop beaver emailed here. We got the Ravens 4-10 against the spread in their last 14 as home favorites. 3-2 against the spread in the last 5 as home favorites. The under is 10-2 in the Ravens' last 12 games as home favorites. The Ravens 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 games overall. Seahawks 10-5-1 against the spread against AFC teams since 2020. Seahawks 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 on the road. Seahawks 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 as road dogs. The over is 6-3 in the Seahawks' last 9 games as road dogs. Seahawks are 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 as underdogs. The under is 5-2 in the Seahawks' last 7 games on underdogs. That's a lot of trends there. Look, I know there's a lot of angles for the Ravens here. I completely get it if you're down to lay the 6 with Baltimore, but I just think that's too many points. I think Seattle's going to take the run game away from the Ravens and make Lamar Jackson play against their pass rush and against their secondary. I like Seattle. I want the points. Give me Seahawks +6 next game. Minnesota on the road in Atlanta. Falcons getting 3.5 points, which is down from 4.5. Total sitting at 37. Public is pretty split even on this one, maybe slightly leaning towards the Falcons. Sharp action is definitely on Minnesota. Sharp seems to like the Vikes here. Odds makers react to it. Like I said, this number was at 4.5 earlier in the week. It's down to 3.5. I'm skipping this one. I mean, there's a very good chance I don't even place a bet on this game. It's not going to be Dobbs. It's going to be Jaron Hall from BYU at quarterback. I don't know. I don't even know how we could evaluate that. I watched him play some games at BYU, but we didn't see anything from him in the Vikings last game. So yeah, this is a pass for me. Next game. Colts on the road in Carolina. Line is Panthers +2.5. Total sitting at 37.5. So early actually came in on the Colts, and you would think at this line that Indianapolis would be the heavy public side, but it's actually completely flipped. Sharp action is now all over Carolina in this one. Line hasn't budged from what I've seen. It's still looking at Panthers +2.5 across the board. So let's talk injury reports. Colts offense, obviously still without Anthony Richardson. They're also going to be without Braden Smith, who plays right tackle. He hasn't played since week 5. Josh Downs is questionable, which would be a significant one, but he actually practiced on Thursday and Friday, so I'm assuming he probably plays. On the defensive side of the ball, the Colts are still missing Brenton Flowers, 2 starting corners. Neither of them have played since week 4. They're also missing Grover Stewart on the defensive line. He hasn't played since week 6. Rodney Thomas is listed as questionable, but he participated in a full practice on Friday, so I think he's going to play. Zaire Franklin, however, he's a linebacker. He hasn't practiced all week, so I would imagine he's probably not going to play. Panthers offensively are still missing Christensen at left guard. He's been out for a while now. DJ Chark, also questionable at wide receiver. He missed Wednesday's practice, but then he practiced a bit on Thursday and Friday, so I would imagine he'll be a game time decision. On the defensive side of the ball, Carolina is absolutely wrecked with injuries, same as last week. J.C. Horn out, Von Bell doubtful, Jeremy Chin out, Dante Jackson is questionable, but I think he's going to play. Shaq Thompson out, Justin Houston out, just a complete mess. But you know what? The Panthers defense was in a similar spot last week injury-wise, and they did a great job against CJ Stroud and the Texans. So let's match these two teams up on the field, and we'll start with Gardner Minshew and the Colts passing offense. I mean, he hasn't been bad, but he's definitely been streaky. I mean, look at his passer rating by game on the season. 112, then 82. 112, then 60. 119, then 76. seems like every other game he comes out and has a good performance. So, I mean, if we follow that pattern, this one should be a good game. And he's matched up against a Carolina pass defense that's been slightly below average. I mean, not terrible, though. They're 14th in DVOA, 21st in yards per pass attempt allowed, 23rd in opponent's passer rating. And again, they're missing a ton of pieces in their secondary. I mean, but like I said, they were missing all those pieces last week, and CJ Stroud really struggled. Just 140 yards passing on 5.8 yards per pass attempt, an 81 passer rating. One of the worst games of his career. The thing that stands out to me in this matchup is Carolina likes to blitz a lot defensively. They've blitzed on 32.4% of their defensive snaps this year. That's the 6th highest in the NFL. Gardner Minshew has been awful against the blitz this year. Look at this. When blitzed, he's 31st in passer rating, tied for 29th with 3 interceptions, 35th in yards per pass attempt. When not blitzed, those numbers jump up to 9th, 6th, and 3rd. But the good news for Gardner Minshew is he has a run game. The Colts have been running the ball really well this year, and it just seems to be heating up. That CJ Stroud and the Texans cannot say the same thing. Last week, Houston, 30 carries, just 110 yards on the ground. That's 3.67 yards per carry. They were held to 13 points and lost, obviously. Texans have struggled to run the ball all year. 30th in DVOA, 30th in yards per carry. Colts, on the other hand, they've been excellent at running the ball. They're 4th in DVOA, 6th in yards per carry. And Jonathan Taylor seems to just be heating up now. In his first 2 games back, he was averaging just 2.6 yards per carry. His last 2 games, 30 carries for 170 yards. That's 5.7 yards per carry. Even better news for the Colts, Carolina's run defense might be the worst in the NFL. It's either them or Denver, but Denver's kind of stepped it up a little, so it's probably Carolina. They're 32nd in run defense DVOA, 32nd in adjusted line yards, 28th in yards per carry allowed. Yes, they did a great job against the Texans run game last week, but we just talked about how bad that run game's been. So I don't think we can compare, considering the Colts have had one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL all season. On the other side of the ball, Colts have been, I guess, okay at defending the pass, slightly below average. They're 21st in DVOA, 17th in opponent passer rating, 26 in yards per attempt. Really, the problem is they create no pressure. The Colts pass rush just hasn't been there this year. 23rd in adjusted sack rate, 26th in pressure rate, 28th in QB hurry rate. That is music to Bryce Young's ears because he has really struggled with pressure so far this season. Offensive line has done him no favors. Their offensive line is 25th in adjusted sack rate, 21st in pressure rate allowed, 22nd in QB hit rate allowed. And some more good news for Bryce Young. Colts run a lot of zone coverage, just like Houston does. Colts run zone on 65.3% of their defensive snaps. That's the 8th most in the NFL. And if you look at Bryce Young's splits against man and zone, just 52% completions and a 72 passer rating against man coverage, 77% completions and a 90 passer rating against zone. We just saw it last week against Houston, who runs a lot of zone. Also, Bryce Young seems to be benefiting from the play calling switch because Frank Reich gave the play calling duties over to OC Thomas Brown. We saw Bryce Young have the best game of his young career. 235 yards, 71% completions, a 103.6 passer rating. Big question in this one is, can you trust the Panthers to get the run game going? Colts run defense has been pretty good. They're 21st in DVOA, but they're 11th in yards per carry allowed, 11th in adjusted line yards. But the thing is, those numbers might be skewed because they started off the season in dominant fashion. In the first 2 games, they played Jacksonville and Houston. They held those 2 teams to a combined 2.57 yards per carry. In their last 6 games since then, the Colts are allowing 4.32 yards per carry. Now, they have seen some dominant rushing attacks, but the run defense has definitely fallen off a bit. So do you think Carolina can get it going on the ground? I mean, on the season, Panthers rushing hasn't done much. 29th in DVOA, 26th in adjusted line yards, 26 in yards per carry by running back. Miles Sanders averaging just 3 yards per carry after averaging 4.9 yards per carry last season with the Eagles. I feel like I'm just rambling on at this point. As far as the side, this is a really tough one to call. If I could get Carolina +3, put a few dollars on it, but I don't want to touch it at 2.5 because I do think the Colts win, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the over. I think Bryce Young should continue to improve against another zone-heavy defense with no pass rush, and I think the Colts should be able to run the ball on Carolina's defense. Hopefully they don't eat too much of the clock and kills this over, but yeah, give me the over at 44. Next game. New York Football Giants on the road out in Vegas to play the Raiders. Raiders laying 1.5 points at home, which is down from 3. Total sitting at 37.5. So this line was actually at 3 as recent as Tuesday morning. Sharp actually came in and hammered the Giants at that number. It's now down to 1.5. Since it hit 1.5, action seems to be coming in pretty split even on this one. I'm going to skip this one for now and save it for the live show. I mean, I guess I'm leaning Raiders, but I don't know. I don't want to give a definitive pick in case it changes, so I'm going to pass on this one for now. Next game. Time for the NFC East showdown. We got Cowboys at Eagles. Line is Philly laying 3 at home, total sitting at 47. So early action was in on the Eagles, but it's evening out a bit now. As I'm recording this, the public is on Philly, but the money's closer to even, so a little bit of sharp action in on the Dallas Cowboys. Is the Dak attack back? Dak Prescott's looking good, man. His last 2 games, 288 pass yards per game, completing 75% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, just 1 interception, 121 passer rating. These numbers were against the Rams and Chargers, so not exactly elite defenses, but it's not like he was playing the Bears and the Broncos. And the Cowboys passing rankings are on the come up. They're up to 13th in passing DVOA, 13th in yards per pass attempt, 8th in passer rating. This offense is flying high. And you could say almost the exact opposite for this Eagles pass defense. This unit's looking like a shell of itself from last year. Last year against the pass, they were 1st in DVOA, 5th in opponent passer rating. This year, 23rd and 25th. They went into the Washington game last week and saw a Commanders offense that they just saw 2 weeks before, and the way Washington was struggling to protect Sam Howell, you would think that would be a prime spot for the Eagles pass rush, the pass defense, to really dominate. Sam Howell might have had the best game of his career. Threw for 397 yards, 75% completions, 4 touchdowns and a pick, and a 114 passer rating. The most alarming part of that, if you're an Eagles fan, Philly had just 1 sack in that game. The Washington Commanders have allowed 4+ sacks in the previous 7 games before that, and 5+ sacks in 6 of those 7, including pass rushers like Atlanta and Chicago. And the Eagles only had 1 sack. I think we're far enough into the season to call a spade a spade. This Eagles pass rush is not what it was last year. Last year, they had the best pass rush in football. 1st in pressure rate, 1st in adjusted sack rate. This year, they're 15th and 18th. But to be fair, Dallas pass protection is not what it was last year either. Last year, they were 6th in pressure rate allowed, 4th in adjusted sack rate allowed. This year, 11th and 20th. So they've fallen off a bit as well. And as good as Dak Prescott has looked in his last 2 games, we can't just ignore his home away splits. He's played 4 games on the road this year. He's completing just 61.9% of his passes, just 204 passing yards per game, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks, just a 76 passer rating. At home, 81% of his passes, 273 yards per game, 8 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a 118 passer rating. So this game being on the road in Philly is definitely not a good sign for Dak Prescott, considering he struggled against bad defenses on the road. I do have some good news for Dak, though. Eagles run man coverage on 56% of their defensive snaps this season. That's the 7th most in the NFL. Dak Prescott's numbers against zone, 14th in passer rating, 19th in net yards per attempt. Against man, 7th and 7th in those 2 categories. So I'm going to say the same thing this week that I said last week. Whenever you see the Cowboys matched up against a team who runs man coverage, you should probably look at CeeDee Lamb's overs, because Dak and CeeDee Lamb just destroy man coverage. As far as the Cowboys trying to run the ball, I'm not expecting to see much in that department. I mean, the Dallas run game has been a massive disappointment this year. 23rd in rushing DVOA, 14th in adjusted line yards. So the offensive line's doing a decent job. Just 19th in yards per carry. I don't need to go through it again. I talked about it a lot last week in the Cowboys-Rams game. Offensive line is doing a decent job. Tony Pollard is underperforming this season. Good news for the Eagles. Maybe their pass defense has fallen off this year from where it was last year, but the run defense did the complete opposite. The run defense was the Eagles' main defensive weakness last year. This year, it's their strength. Last year, they were 19th, 24th, and 22nd in DVOA, yards per carry, and adjusted line yards. This year, 1st, 8th, and 9th. So I don't see the Cowboys getting the run game going. One thing we do have to give the Cowboys offense, though, situational stats. Cowboys 3rd in the NFL in 3rd down conversion rate. Eagles 25th, their defense in 3rd down conversion. So Cowboys with a huge edge on 3rd down. On the other side of the ball, we've got a Cowboys pass defense that continues to be dominant despite the massive loss of Trayvon Diggs. They're 3rd in pass defense DVOA, 8th in yards per attempt, 3rd in opponent's passer rating. But just like Dak Prescott, this pass defense has really serious home away splits. Their last 3 road games, quarterbacks are completing 68% of their passes, 7 touchdowns, 1 picks, a 121 passer rating. Their last 3 quarterbacks to come into Dallas, just 51% completions, 2 touchdowns, 6 picks, just a 50 passer rating. Now they're on the road again in Philly against the Eagles pass offense that looks pretty good, despite losing their OC from last season. They're still throwing the ball at an efficient rate. 9th in passing DVOA, 5th in yards per pass attempt, 11th in passer rating. Jalen Hurts coming off the best game of his season so far against Washington, 29 of 38, 319 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and a 135 passer rating. An impressive game from Jalen Hurts for sure. But the Washington Commanders are a bottom 3 pass defense, and the Dallas Cowboys are a top 3 pass defense. Another positive angle for Jalen Hurts and the Eagles pass offense would be just like Dak Prescott, he's been better at home. At home this year, he's been completing 72% of his passes, 107 passer rating, compared to an 87 passer rating on the road. Now at home, the defenses he's seen is Minnesota, Washington, and Miami. It's important to take note of that. But to me, though, the main matchup on this side of the ball is right here, the Cowboys pass rush. Without Trevon Diggs, this defense is reliant on the pass rush to disrupt more than ever, and they've done just that. Cowboys are second in pressure rate, first in QB hurry rate on the season. Unfortunately for the Cowboys, Jalen Hurts has been excellent under pressure this year. When pressured, he's fifth in passer rating, second in adjusted completion percentage, fourth in yards per attempt, and third in passing touchdowns. As far as the Eagles running the ball, this is where it gets a little interesting. The Cowboys' run defense is good. It's not great. It's been good. It's 9th in DVOA, 16th in yards per carry, 7th in adjusted line yards. In reality, it's probably a little better than that because they had that one terrible game against the Cardinals. Against the Cardinals, they allowed 222 rushing yards on 7.4 yards per carry. In their other 6 games, just 90 rushing yards per game on 3.48 yards per carry. So if you take out that one Cardinals game, the Cowboys' run defense has been pretty elite. Now, the Eagles on the season have great rushing numbers. 5th in DVOA, 12th in adjusted line yards, 13th in yards per carry by running backs. But we do have to take note that they haven't been producing on the ground lately like they were early in the season. Through the first 3 games, they were averaging 4.92 yards per carry as a team. In their last 5 games, just 3.48 yards per carry. And who did they play? Washington twice, Miami, the Jets, who don't even have the greatest run defense, and the Rams. I mean, these are not good run defenses, and the Eagles haven't been running the ball. Before we get to the bet, I got some trends here. The Cowboys are 1-3 against the spread in their last 4 trips to Philadelphia, so not good for Dallas. 5 straight overs between the Cowboys and Eagles. Between the Cowboys and Eagles, 5 straight overs. The under is 6-2 in the Cowboys' last 8 road games. Jalen Hurts, 9-4-1 against the spread at home since last season. Look, I already bet Dallas. I took Dallas at +3. I was scared it was going to drop to 2.5. I mean, I'm sticking with it. It's a huge division game on the road. I wouldn't be completely shocked to see Dak Prescott choke, but he's been great against the NFC East over the course of his career. This is what I see happening. I think Dallas wins this game, then they beat the Giants at home next week, and then they lose on the road to Carolina in Week 11. That's what I think is going to happen. So, yeah, give me Dallas +3 next game. Buffalo at Cincinnati. Rematch of the playoff game. We got Cincinnati laying 2 points at home. Total sitting at 50.5. Public is all over Cincinnati in this one, and the line's actually moving the other way. It was at Cincinnati -3 earlier in the week, down to 1.5 on some books. So those of you that like to play reverse line movement, Buffalo would be your move here. So there's a lot of criticism about the Bills going around right now. But none of that belongs on the shoulders of Josh Allen because he picked up right where he left off last year. Bills passing offense is 2nd in DVOA, 6th in passer rating, 7th in yards per pass attempt. But just like Dak Prescott and just like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen hasn't been as good throwing the ball on the road this year. Bills are just 1-2 on the road. In his 3 road games, he's averaging just 239 yards per game, 4 touchdowns, 5 picks, a 77 passer rating, compared to a 117 passer rating at home. Now, his 3 road games, 2 of them were against division opponents, the Jets and the Patriots, so we should take note of that. Also, Josh Allen struggling with turnovers again this year like he did last year. He's got 8 picks on the season, which is 2nd in the NFL. And that may be an issue in this matchup in particular because the Bengals' pass defense may not be elite, but they've been excellent at creating turnovers. Cincinnati's 4th in the NFL, averaging 1.9 takeaways per game. Opponents have had 2 or more interceptions in 4 of the last 5 Bengals games and at least 1 interception in 6 of the last 7 on the season. Against the pass on the year, Cincinnati's solid. I mean, not elite, but solid. 11th in pass defense DVOA, 8th in opponent passer rating, but they're 29th in yards per attempt. So opposing quarterbacks are able to get the ball down the field on Cincinnati, but the turnovers have kept them right in the game. Good news for the Bengals defense would be Lou Anarumo had no problem with Josh Allen in the playoff matchup. They really shut him down. 25 of 42, 59% completions, 6.3 yards per attempt, no touchdowns and a pick, a 68 passer rating. So they had no problem stopping this guy in the playoffs last year. And as far as the Bills' run game, I mean, it got off to a hot start. Through the first 3 games, they were averaging 4.98 yards per carry. James Cook was looking pretty solid. But in the last 5 weeks since then, Bills are averaging just 3.75 yards per carry as a team and just 91 rushing yards per game. And that's huge because the story of the Buffalo Bills season can be broken down to their run game. In the Bills' 5 wins, they average 139.6 rushing yards per game on 4.6 yards per carry. In their 3 losses, just 69 rushing yards per game on 3.5 yards per carry. So basically, if the Bills can run the ball, they win the game. If they can't, they'll lose the game. Good news for the Bills. Cincinnati's run defense is by far the weakness of this team. They're 25th in run defense DVOA, 30th in yards per carry allowed, 26th in adjusted line yards. The Bengals have allowed opponents to average over 4.8 yards per carry in 6 of their 7 games this year. When the Bills average 4.4 yards per carry or more, they're 4-1. When the Bills average 4.5 yards per carry or more, they're 2-0 with an average margin of victory of 31 points. Situational stats, the edge definitely goes to the Buffalo Bills. I mean, the Bills are 2nd in the NFL in 3rd down conversion percentage, 2nd in the NFL in red zone percentage. The Bengals defensively, 24th and 10th. Now, when we switch it over to the other side of the ball, this is where we start finding angles for the Bengals. The Bills' pass defense, we're starting to see it fall apart. The last 4 quarterbacks to play the Bills, they're averaging 256 yards per game, 5 touchdowns, no picks, an average passer rating of 100, compared to the numbers that were much lower in the first 4 quarterbacks they've seen. Want to know the names of the last 4 quarterbacks the Bills have seen that are giving them such problems? Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones, Tyrod Taylor, and Trevor Lawrence. I'll give you Trevor Lawrence, but Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones, and Tyrod Taylor? Some more good news for the Bengals offense, and spoilers, every single angle is positive for the Bengals offense here. The Bills run a lot of zone. The Bills have the 7th highest zone frequency. They run 65% of their defensive snaps in zone. The reason that's such good news for the Bengals is Joe Burrow's been much better against zone coverage this year. Against man on the season, Joe Burrow just 29th in passer rating, 30th in net yards per attempt. Against zone, 13th and 13th. And while the Bills' pass defense seems to be falling apart in recent weeks, the Bengals' passing offense seems to be doing the exact opposite. Joe Burrow, through 4 games, completing just 57% of his passes, just 182 yards per game, 69 passer rating. In his last 3 games, 78% of his passes, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, a 112 passer rating. And the biggest difference we've seen is the way he's handling pressure. Clearly, he feels a lot more comfortable on, I think it was his calf. Through the first 4 weeks, Joe Burrow, when pressured, 32nd in completion percentage, 34th in yards per attempt, 25th in passer rating, 19th in PFF passer grade. The last 3 weeks when pressured, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 1st. Joe Burrow is all the way back. And those pressure numbers are very important because Buffalo's defense, it's falling apart everywhere, but there's one area where Buffalo's defense is still elite. It's pressuring the quarterback. They're 4th in adjusted sack rate, 13th in pressure rate, 5th in QB hit rate. So the fact that Joe Burrow is handling pressure at an elite level now, huge for the Bengals offense in this matchup. And the Bengals pass protection. You remember when that was the Bengals issue, right? For the first 2 years of Joe Burrow's career, they couldn't protect him. It was the Achilles heel of the offense. Well, they figured it out. This year, they're 7th in adjusted sack rate allowed, 4th in pressure rate allowed, and 1st in QB hurry rate allowed. And some more good news for the Bengals, they might finally have a matchup where they can run the football. The Bills' run defense can't stop anybody right now. They've fallen all the way back to 17th in run defense DVOA. They're 31st in the NFL, allowing 5.1 yards per carry on the season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers just averaged 4.6 yards per carry on the Bills last week. Tampa Bay couldn't average 4.6 yards per carry on Iowa State right now. Cincinnati, as we know, has been struggling to get the run game going this year. 18th in DVOA, 15th in adjusted line yards, 24th in yards per carry. So maybe this Bills defense is exactly what they need to get Joe Mixon going. I mean, we did just see him snap on the 49ers last week. 27 carries, 134 yards, 5 yards per carry. In the previous 6 games, just 3.45 yards per carry. Some betting trends for those of you who like them. Bills 6-3 against the spread in their last 9 as underdogs. The over has cashed in 9 straight Bills games as underdogs. The over has cashed in 7 straight Bills games as road underdogs. The under has cashed in 9 of the last 11 road games for the Bills. Bengals 1-3-1 against the spread in their last 5 home games. Bengals 7-4-1 against the spread in their last 11 as home favorites. As far as when I'm betting, look, I absolutely hate it. Not only am I betting against the line movement, but I'm siding with the heavy public. I just can't get there with the Bills. I would love to fade everyone and take Buffalo, but I can't do it. They're going to give us a 1.5. Gotta take it. Give me Cincinnati minus 1.5. If you want my top bets, parlays of the day, if you want to join our Discord, anything like that, head over to KyleKirms.com. Live show Sunday morning, 11 a.m. We'll go through all the games, make our final decisions. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let's have ourselves a great week 9. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.